Hi, Thriller Recaps here. Today, I am going to explain the movie The Killer, explaining every scene as it happens. Watch till the end, and please like, share and subscribe if you enjoy this. The movie begins in a dark, isolated room. The room houses a man who turns out to be an assassin. He stares blankly at the outside world as a space heater hums in the background. He talks about how mundane the job could be and how any man who does not have the patience to sustain through boredom must never come into this profession. He seems to be watching a magnificent house directly in front of the building where he's seated. Once the sun comes up, he finally stands and goes to freshen up while his eyes are still fixated on the building. He moves back to the window, still watching the outside world while speaking on life and death, and how he believes the great beyond is just a cold and void place. He then prepares for work, putting on a coat and a hat. He leaves the building, revealing he's camouflaging as a German tourist to avoid people, as he knows the Persians would avoid him. Soon, he gets a call from Hodges to give him some information about their target and also tells him to give him, Hodges, a call if the day doesn't go as planned. He disconnects the call before Hodges could finish his speech and destroys the phone. His attention doesn't leave the magnificent building from earlier. He watches the security man by the door guiding it and the people that go into the building. He watches a mother busy on her phone as her young son plays and even points a fake gun at her. Soon, he returns to his room, goes back to the window, and his attention still doesn't leave the building. He continues to monitor human interactions. Later, the killer begins assembling his weapons, his eyes still fixated on the building. He continues watching as he sees people come in and out of the building. He finally leaves the window. He talks about Gary Ridgway, a killer who had murdered over 49 women in 2 decades. He tries sleeping but keeps setting alarms to awaken him so he wouldn't miss his target. Not long after, the topmost area of the building he's been monitoring lights up as 2 men walk into the building. He takes out his gun and begins to assemble it again. Other people also walk into the building just as the killer opens his windows. He seems very precise with his actions and takes things very slow even after identifying his target. He is very calculated and remains calm as his target continues to wander around. When he finally shoots, he misses as he shoots the lady his target is with instead. The curtain is closed, and he has no chance to shoot again. Knowing he would be caught up by law enforcement, he decides to pack his things and leave before they get to him. The police arrive at the scene very confused. As the killer leaves, he disposes of every piece of evidence, not in a very secure way. The killer is able to flee successfully but is not so happy about his failed mission, as it seems he's never missed a shot before. He walks into a public bathroom where he washes himself and changes out of his clothes. Finally, he goes to the airport for his flight back home. He calls Hodges to give him the bad news. Hodges doesn't take it very lightly but promises to do something about it, preferably talk to the client. As usual, the killer doesn't allow Hodges to finish his sentence before destroying the phone. Soon, he notices a strange man who had been following him from the time his flight began to the time it ended. He decides to continue his trip to Santo Domingo the following day. He finally gets home only to find blood stains, a broken mirror, and hair strands. Rushing to a hospital, he finds his wife battling with her life. The killer is told that his wife had seen the shooters and could recognize them, but he's told not to disturb her. Marcus, her brother, begins to panic as he feels his sister's life is in danger. The killer assures him that nothing would happen. His wife regains consciousness. She tells her husband the people who shot her wanted information about him, but she didn't give any. When the killer returns home, he goes to his backyard to pick his hidden weapons and begins another trip. He is able to find the people who had assaulted his wife. Being precise, he begins to track his new targets. He meets with a cab driver, Leo, who gives him the information he needed. He tells the cab driver to take him to an abandoned spot who seemed innocent but the killer unalienable him and leaves like nothing happened. Using the information from Leo, he begins his trip. He arrives in New Orleans. He drives to a storage facility where he prepares more weapons and a fake car plate number which he would use for his new mission. He pretends as a garbage man. He finds Dolores, a lady he believes to have assaulted his wife. He finds a way to walk into the building where she had entered. He studies the building before going into the room where she was. She seems scared to see him and takes him to Hodges, who tries to guilt-trap him by calling him a madman. Hodges tells the killer he was forced to make amends to a very powerful man, and he didn't think the killer would actually go home. Angrily, the killer destroys Hodges' laptop. The killer knows Hodges is hiding something from him and has backups. When Hodges tells the killer to leave, he punches holes in his chest, therefore inserting 3 nails in his chest. He leaves the room, leaving Hodges fighting for his life. He later goes back and meets Dolores, who tells him she has the names of the people he's looking for but tells him to promise her he would keep her alive. Still, the killer had promised himself not to give empathy no matter what. He frees her, but she passes out as she sees Hodges' dead body. He puts the dead body in the bin he had been carrying so he'd be able to dispose of the body easily. As he drives, Dolores tells him she's not a bad person. He stops in front of a building and goes in as Dolores tries to free herself. Later, they both go into the building. She gives him all the information he needs. He finds out the name of the client is Claiborne. Just as she's about to leave, he pushes her over the staircase before going back into his storage facility to dispose of Hodges' body. He cleans up and disposes of the fake plate number before getting another car to one of Claiborne's men's locations in Florida. He finds his new target's home and sedates the dog before gaining entrance into the compound. He finds the dog happily sleeping. A while later, he enters the building. He gets attacked by a man who almost kills him. They fight for a while. He is able to escape before the man kills him but not without injuring the man brutally. He later goes back in and kills the man. The dog awakens upon hearing the gunshot. The killer leaves the building after burning it down. He begins his journey to New York to find his next target. He waits in his car parked opposite his target, who's a woman named Expert. He watches as she goes into a cab and doesn't hesitate to go after her. He keeps track of all her movements. As she enters a restaurant, he goes with her, knowing he's justified if she dies as the main suspect is always her boyfriend or husband. He sits with her, and she offers him a meal. She immediately knows Hodges and the rest of her team had died. Expert tries to justify herself and the reason why they had to involve his wife. She also tries to blame him for missing the earlier part of the movie. The killer seems quite patient as he watches her talk. They both leave the restaurant. The lady who knew the killer would come for her doesn't panic and even tries to pick locations where she should be killed. He kills her and quotes one of his famous words, "Trust no one if you want to succeed." His next target is Claiborne. He travels to Chicago. He knows how risky it is, as Claiborne is a very important figure and his death would raise eyebrows. He finds his way into the man's garage and takes a picture of his lock. He continues to study Claiborne's activities, his going in and coming out. He buys a gun before registering in the same gym Claiborne works out. He begins to prep everything he would need for his task before leaving. He is able to infiltrate the billionaire's house. He finds Claiborne, who immediately sees the gun in the killer's hands and thinks he's a robber. The killer introduces himself, and Claiborne immediately recognizes him. Claiborne reveals that after the accident, he'd received a phone call that things didn't go the way they were meant to. He claims his response was, "Nobody's perfect," and Hodges had told him to arrange for insurance to avoid blowback and offered an extra $150K, according to Hodges, to clean up. The killer leaves but not after promising Claiborne a fitting and slow death that won't cause suspicions. He goes back home to the Dominican Republic with his wife looking better. Don't forget to subscribe as this encourages us to make more videos daily. It also helps with the YouTube algorithm. Please, like, share and subscribe. We love you and we'll see you in the next video.